Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Aurora Dawn, staring at the massive shape floating in the darkness ahead. The ship was huge, easily twice the size of his own vessel. Its hull gleamed with an odd silver color that seemed to shift in the starlight. "What do you think, Lisa?" Jake asked, turning to the woman beside him. Dr. Lisa Warren was the best temporal physics expert in the fleet. If anyone could figure out what they were looking at, it would be her. Lisa frowned at her scanner readings. "The metal is definitely human-made, Captain. But these energy signatures are strange. I'm reading temporal distortions all around that ship." Commander Pete Collins stepped forward from his station. "Could it be a trap? Maybe aliens built it to look like one of our ships." Jake shook his head. "Look at the design. Those are human construction patterns. See the way the hull plates overlap? That's how we built ships about 100 years ago." Engineer Amy Foster looked up from her console. "Captain, I'm getting weird readings from their engines. The power core is active, but it's not producing any thrust. It's like the energy is just sitting there, not going anywhere." Dr. Tony Blake, the ship's medic, moved closer to the main screen. "Are there life signs aboard?" "That's the strange part," Lisa said. "I'm detecting human life signs, but they're not moving at all. It's like they're all perfectly still." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. A ghost ship filled with motionless people was not something he had expected to find on this routine patrol mission. "Could they be dead?" Pete asked. "No," Lisa replied, checking her instruments again. "They have heartbeats, brain activity, everything. They're alive, but somehow frozen in place." Jake made his decision. "We're going aboard. Amy, prepare a docking tube. Tony, get your medical kit ready. Pete, arm yourself, but keep weapons on stun. Lisa, bring all your temporal scanning equipment." "Captain," Pete said carefully, "maybe we should call for backup first." "From where?" "The nearest fleet ship is 3 days away. If there are people in trouble over there, we can't wait that long." Amy worked at her controls. "Docking tube is ready, Captain. I'm detecting a standard airlock on their port side." The 5 crew members suited up and crossed through the docking tube into the strange ship. The moment they stepped inside, emergency lighting flickered on throughout the corridor. The air was breathable and their suits detected normal pressure. "Look at this," Tony whispered, pointing down the hallway. 3 crew members in old-style uniforms stood frozen in the middle of the corridor. One was in mid-step, his foot raised off the deck. Another was turning to look over his shoulder, his mouth open as if he had been speaking. The third was reaching for something on the wall. "They're like statues," Pete said, walking around one of the frozen figures. "But warm statues." "I can feel body heat." Lisa held up her scanner. "The temporal distortions are stronger inside the ship. It's like time itself has stopped moving normally here." They moved deeper into the vessel. Every room they entered showed the same scene. People frozen in the middle of their daily activities. In the mess hall, a woman sat with a spoon halfway to her mouth. In engineering, a man was bent over a control panel, his finger pointing at a blinking light. "This is impossible," Amy said. "How can time just stop for some people but not others?" "It hasn't stopped completely," Lisa explained. "It's moving very, very slowly. What feels like a second to them might be hours to us." They reached the ship's laboratory and found it filled with complex equipment that Jake didn't recognize. Computers covered every wall, showing data that scrolled too fast to read. In the center of the room, a young woman in a white lab coat stood next to a large machine with her hand on a control switch. "Wait," Lisa said suddenly. "Look at her readings. They're different from the others." As they watched, the woman's chest rose and fell slightly. Her eyes moved just a tiny bit. Then, without warning, she gasped and stumbled backward. "Who are you?" the woman asked, looking around in panic. "How did you get on our ship?" Jake stepped forward slowly, his hands visible and empty. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the Aurora Dawn. You're safe. We're here to help." The woman looked confused. "The Aurora Dawn? I've never heard of that ship. What year is it?" "It's 2387, Jake replied. The woman went pale. "That's impossible. It was just 2287 a few minutes ago. We were testing the temporal drive and then—" She looked around at her frozen crewmates. "Oh no, the time field. It worked too well." "What's your name?" Lisa asked gently. "Katie Price. I'm a quantum physicist. This is the Meridian. We're humanity's first faster-than-light research vessel." Katie walked over to one of her frozen colleagues. "This is Dr. Sam Mitchell, our chief scientist. And that's Captain Ron Hayes." "You're saying this ship is from 100 years ago?" Pete asked. Katie nodded. "We were testing a new type of engine that could bend time and space." Something went wrong and we got caught in a temporal bubble. For us, only minutes have passed. But outside, she looked at Jake. 100 years? How are you able to move when they can't? Amy asked. I was wearing a temporal shielding device when the accident happened. It must have protected me somehow. Katie's eyes filled with tears. 100 years. Everyone we knew, everyone we left behind on Earth? They're all gone. Jake put a hand on her shoulder. I'm sorry, but right now we need to focus on your crew. Can they be saved? Katie wiped her eyes and nodded. Maybe the temporal field is unstable. That's probably why you could enter the ship safely, but it's also slowly breaking down. If we don't do something soon, the time distortion could collapse completely. What would happen then? Lisa asked. Everything that's been slowed down would suddenly speed up all at once. The ship, the crew, everything would try to catch up to normal time instantly. Katie's face was grim. The human body can't handle that kind of temporal shock. They would all die. Jake looked at his crew. They had come aboard expecting to find a simple rescue mission. Instead, they had discovered a ship full of people from the past, trapped in time itself. How long do we have? He asked. Katie checked one of her instruments. Maybe 6 hours before the field collapses completely. Then we better get to work, Jake said. Katie, tell us everything you know about this temporal technology. Lisa, I want you working with her on a solution. Amy, see if you can understand their engineering systems. Pete, help me search the ship for anything useful. Tony, check on the frozen crew members and make sure they're stable. As his team spread out through the meridian, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that this was bigger than just a rescue mission. A 100-year-old ship with advanced technology, appearing at exactly the moment they found it. There had to be more to this story. Katie Price led Jake and Lisa to the Meridian's main computer center. Her hands shook as she accessed files that were a century old but felt like yesterday to her. I need to show you something, Katie said, pulling up a star map on the main screen. This is why we were really out here. The map showed human space as it was in 2287. Red markers indicated several colonies on the outer rim. 3 months before our mission, these colonies went silent, Katie explained. Not destroyed, not attacked. They just stopped communicating. When scout ships arrived, they found the planets completely empty. No people, no bodies, nothing. Lisa studied the map. What happened to the colonists? We found traces of exotic radiation at each site. Temporal radiation. Something was using time itself as a weapon. Katie's voice grew quiet. The colonies weren't destroyed. They were aged to death. Thousands of years passed in seconds until everything turned to dust. Jake felt cold. What kind of enemy can do that? Katie pulled up another file. Grainy images appeared on screen showing massive black ships with strange flowing designs. We called them the Void Collective. They're not like any species we'd encountered before. They exist partially outside normal time and space. They feed on temporal energy, draining entire star systems. Why were you testing the temporal drive then? Amy asked, joining them in the computer room. Because normal weapons don't work on them. Missiles pass right through their ships. Energy weapons get absorbed and used against us. The only way to fight something that controls time is to control it ourselves. Pete appeared in the doorway. Katie, I found something you need to see. There's a message beacon in your communications room. It's been recording and transmitting on repeat for the past 100 years. They hurried to the communications center, where Pete showed them a small device flashing with urgent red lights. It's a warning message, Pete said. Targeted at Earth. Katie's face went white as she read the beacon's display. Oh no, we were supposed to deliver this warning personally. The beacon was just a backup. She turned to Jake. According to our calculations, the Void Collective main fleet was 3 years away from Earth when we left in 2287. Lisa did quick math in her head. That means they should have arrived in 2290, 3 years ago. The beacon has been transmitting our warning for 100 years, Katie said desperately. But did anyone receive it? Did anyone believe it? Jake activated his communicator. Morrison to Aurora Dawn. Get me a priority channel to Earth Command immediately. After several minutes, a voice crackled through the speakers. Earth Command responding. Captain Morrison, this is General Frank Walsh. We received your initial report about the derelict vessel. General, we need information about alien attacks in 2290. Specifically, attacks by ships using temporal weapons. There was a long pause. Captain, that information is classified at the highest levels. How do you know about the Void War? Jake and Katie exchanged glances. General, we need that classification lifted immediately. Lives depend on it. Stand by, Captain. While they waited, Katie accessed more files from the Meridian's computer. Look at this, she said, showing them technical blueprints. We weren't just researching temporal drives. We developed weapons, shields, everything needed to fight the Void Collective. But if they attacked 3 years ago, why haven't we heard about it? Amy asked. The communicator crackled back to life. Captain Morrison, this is Admiral Sarah Johnson. General Walsh has briefed me on your situation. The Void War lasted 2 years. Humanity lost 47 colonies and nearly 1 billion people. Katie sank into a chair, devastated. However, the Admiral continued, we won. Earth and the major colonies survived. The enemy was driven back using advanced temporal technology that appeared just when we needed it most. Appeared how? Jake asked. 100 years ago, we started receiving technical data from an unknown source. Blueprints for temporal shields, weapons, everything we needed to fight an enemy we didn't even know existed yet. The source was identified as a ship called the Meridian. Katie looked up with tears in her eyes. Our beacon worked. The data we transmitted saved humanity. Not exactly, the Admiral said grimly. The war ended 3 years ago, but the Void Collective wasn't destroyed. They retreated beyond the edge of known space. Our intelligence suggests they're gathering strength for another attack. When? Lisa asked. We don't know. Could be years, could be decades. But there's something else. 2 days ago, our deep space monitors detected massive energy signatures moving toward human space. They match Void Collective ship patterns. Jake felt his heart sink. They're coming back. Yes, and this time they'll be ready for our temporal technology. Captain Morrison, if the Meridian is truly functional, we need that ship and its crew. Katie stood up, wiping her eyes. My crewmates are still frozen in time. We have maybe 4 hours before the temporal field collapses and kills them all. Then we better work fast, Jake said. Katie, what do you need to revive your crew safely? The temporal field has to be stabilized gradually. Too fast and the shock will kill them. Too slow and the field will collapse anyway. Katie moved to the engineering station. I need to recalibrate the entire temporal matrix while simultaneously reducing the field strength. Lisa joined her at the controls. I can help. My ship has modern temporal sensors that might be able to monitor the field collapse in real time. Amy looked at the Meridian's engineering displays. Your ship is amazing. The technology is 100 years ahead of what we have now. Not ahead, Katie corrected. Different. We took a completely different path of development. While you focused on improving traditional faster-than-light travel, we went straight to temporal manipulation. Over the next 2 hours, Katie and Lisa worked together to stabilize the temporal field. Jake coordinated between both ships while Pete and Amy helped move equipment and prepare for the crew revival process. The field is responding, Lisa reported. Temporal distortion is decreasing by 2% every 10 minutes. That's good, Katie said. At this rate, we can safely revive the crew in about 3 hours. Tony's voice came over the communicator. Captain, I'm monitoring the frozen crew members. Their vital signs are getting stronger as the field weakens. Whatever you're doing, it's working. But as they worked, alarms began sounding on both ships. Captain, Pete called from the Aurora Dawn's bridge, I'm detecting multiple contacts on long-range sensors. They're big and they're moving fast. Jake rushed to look at the sensor display. Dozens of massive ships were approaching their location. Those are Void Collective vessels, Katie said, her face pale. They must have detected our temporal experiments. How long until they arrive? Jake asked. At their current speed, maybe 6 hours. Jake looked at the countdown timer for the crew revival process. 3 hours to save the Meridian's crew, then 3 more hours before the enemy arrived. We're going to be cutting this very close, he said. Katie checked her instruments one more time. Captain, there's something else. When my crew wakes up, they're going to be confused and disoriented. They'll think only minutes have passed since our accident, learning that 100 years have gone by, that everyone they knew is dead, that Earth was attacked. She shook her head. It's going to be hard for them. We'll help them through it, Jake promised. Right now, humanity needs every advantage we can get. Your ship and crew might be our only hope of surviving what's coming. As if in response to his words, more alarms began sounding. The Void Collective fleet had increased speed. They would arrive in 4 hours, not 6. The race against time had just become desperate. The first person to wake up was Captain Ron Hayes of the Meridian. He opened his eyes slowly. blinking in confusion as he found himself surrounded by strangers in unfamiliar uniforms. "Who are you people?" Ron demanded, trying to sit up. "How did you get aboard my ship?" Katie rushed to his side. "Ron, it's me. Katie Price. Something happened during the temporal drive test. We've been frozen in time." Ron looked around the medical bay where Tony had moved him for recovery. "Frozen? For how long?" Jake stepped forward. "Captain Hayes, I'm Jake Morrison. I know this is hard to accept, but it's been 100 years since your accident." Ron stared at him. "That's impossible. It was just a few minutes ago that we activated the drive." "Look at my equipment," Tony said gently. "Check the computer displays. This medical technology didn't exist in your time." Over the next hour, more crew members woke up. Dr. Sam Mitchell, the Meridian's chief scientist, was the second to revive. Then Lieutenant Kelly Davis, their weapons specialist, followed by Chief Danny Ross, the ship's engineer. Each awakening was the same. Confusion, denial, then slowly accepting the impossible truth. 100 years, Sam said quietly, staring at his hands. "My wife, my children, they're all gone. We all lost someone," Katie said. "But right now we need to focus on why we're here. The Void Collective is coming back." Ron pulled himself together, his military training taking over. "Report, what's our current tactical situation?" Jake explained about the approaching enemy fleet while Lisa and Amy showed them the sensor readings. 36 ships, Kelly observed, studying the display. "That's 3 times larger than any force they deployed during our time. They've had 100 years to build up their strength," Danny said grimly. "While we were frozen, they were growing stronger." Ron turned to Jake. "Captain Morrison, what are your ship's capabilities?" "We have standard plasma weapons, particle shields, and basic faster-than-light drives. Nothing that would be effective against temporal technology." "Then we combine our ships," Ron decided. "The Meridian has weapons that can hurt them, but we need more power to run them effectively." Amy and Danny worked together to link the 2 ships' power systems. It was like connecting a modern computer to a 100-year-old device, except backwards. The older ship's technology was far more advanced. "This is incredible," Amy said as she studied the Meridian's engineering systems. "Your temporal generators don't just bend time. They create pocket universes where different physical laws apply. That's how we fight them," Danny explained. "The Void Collective exists partially outside normal time. Our weapons bring them back into normal space where they can be damaged." But as they worked, problems kept arising. Several crew members began showing signs of rapid aging whenever they got too close to the temporal equipment. "It's temporal radiation poisoning," Tony reported after examining the affected crew members. "Their bodies are trying to catch up for the 100 years they lost." Katie checked her instruments. "The temporal field around our ship is still unstable. It's affecting anyone who wasn't protected during the original accident." "How do we fix it?" Jake asked. "We need to completely recalibrate the temporal matrix," Sam said. "But that means shutting down all our weapons and shields for at least 2 hours." Lisa looked at the enemy fleet approaching on sensors. "We don't have 2 hours. They'll be here in 90 minutes. Ron made the hard decision. "We fight with what we have. Danny, can you stabilize the weapon systems without a full recalibration?" "I can try, but they'll only work at about 60% efficiency. Better than nothing." "Kelly, what's our weapon status?" Kelly ran diagnostics on the Meridian's arsenal. "We have 12 temporal disruption cannons, 6 time displacement torpedoes, and an experimental weapon called a Chronos bomb." "What does the Chronos bomb do?" Pete asked. "It creates a localized time loop. Anything caught in the explosion relives the same few seconds over and over until the energy dissipates." Jake whistled. "How long does that last?" "In our tests, about 10 minutes. But we've never used it against the Void Collective." As they prepared for battle, more complications arose. The Aurora Dawn's crew began experiencing temporal displacement effects from being near the Meridian. Tony aged 5 years and 10 minutes before they could get him to a shielded area. "We need to separate the crews," Ron realized. "Anyone not essential to the fight should move to the Aurora Dawn and maintain minimum safe distance." "No," Jake said firmly. "We're in this together. Just tell us how to protect ourselves." Katie worked frantically to create portable temporal shields. "These should protect you for about an hour each. After that, you'll need to recharge them or get to a safe distance." With 30 minutes until the enemy arrived, they ran final system checks. The 2 ships were now linked together, sharing power and targeting systems. The Meridian would do the fighting while the Aurora Dawn provided additional energy and served as a backup command center. Incoming transmission, Pete reported. It's not from the Void Collective ships. Put it through, Jake ordered. Admiral Johnson's voice came through the speakers. Captain Morrison, this is Admiral Johnson. We've been monitoring your situation. A battle fleet is 3 hours away, but I know you don't have that long. No, ma'am, we don't, Jake replied. Then you need to know something. During the Void War, we learned that the Collective has a weakness. Their hive mind can be disrupted by temporal paradoxes. If you can create a feedback loop in their time manipulation systems, it confuses them. Ron leaned forward. How do we create a feedback loop? We never figured that out. The few times it happened, it was by accident during battle. Katie studied the sensor readings of the approaching fleet. Wait, look at their formation. They're flying in perfect geometric patterns. So? Kelly asked. Hive minds love patterns. They think in mathematical sequences. What if we could disrupt that pattern using temporal distortions? Sam nodded slowly. Create chaos in their formation by making time flow differently for each ship. Can we do that? Ron asked. Maybe, Katie said. If we use the temporal cannons to create multiple small time fields, instead of trying to destroy their ships directly. 20 minutes until they arrive, Lisa reported. Danny finished his work on the weapons systems. Temporal cannons are online but unstable. They'll hold together for one good fight, maybe two. Ron took command of the bridge. All right, people, listen up. We're going to try something that's never been attempted before. We're going to confuse a hive mind by making them think in chaos instead of patterns. And if it doesn't work? Amy asked. Jake answered for him. Then we improvise. That's what humans do best. The sensor display showed the Void Collective fleet dropping out of faster-than-light travel just outside weapon range. 36 massive black ships arranged in perfect triangular formations. They're scanning us, Kelly reported. Energy patterns match their standard tactical assessment protocols. Let them look, Ron said grimly. They're about to see what 100 years of human determination looks like. The enemy fleet began moving forward, maintaining their precise formations. Each ship was twice the size of the Meridian, and their dark hulls seemed to absorb light itself. All stations report ready, Jake announced. Then let's show them why you never count humanity out, Ron said. Fire! The Meridian's temporal cannons erupted in brilliant flashes of distorted light, each beam creating ripples in space-time itself. Instead of trying to destroy the enemy ships, they targeted the empty space between them. Time began flowing differently across the Void Collective fleet. Some ships slowed down while others speeded up. Their perfect formations began to collapse as ships found themselves moving at different rates. It's working, Katie shouted. Their coordination is breaking down. But the enemy was adapting quickly. The larger ships began firing back with weapons that turned space itself into a weapon, creating zones where time moved backward. Evasive maneuvers, both captains shouted at once. The real battle was just beginning. The Void Collective ships were like nothing Jake had ever seen. Their hulls shifted and flowed like liquid metal, and sections of them seemed to fade in and out of existence. When they fired their weapons, reality itself seemed to tear apart. Incoming temporal torpedo, Kelly shouted from the weapons station. The Meridian shuddered as time twisted around them. For a moment, Jake felt like he was moving through thick liquid while his thoughts raced ahead of his body. Shields holding, Danny reported, but we can't take many more hits like that. Ron studied the enemy formations on the main display. Even though their initial attack had disrupted the Collective's perfect patterns, the enemy was already adapting. Individual ships were beginning to move independently while still maintaining some kind of coordination. They're learning from our attack, Sam observed grimly. Their hive mind is figuring out how to counter our temporal disruption. Katie worked frantically at her station. I'm detecting massive energy buildups in their larger ships. They're preparing something big. What kind of something? Jake asked. Based on these readings, I think they're going to try to age our ships to death. Turn 100 years into a few seconds. Lisa ran calculations on her temporal sensors. If they hit us with that kind of time acceleration, our hulls will turn to dust instantly. Can our shield stop it? Ron asked. Not for long, Danny replied. Maybe 30 seconds at full power. The largest Void Collective ship, easily 10 times the size of the Meridian, moved to the front of their formation. Its hull began glowing with a sickly green light that hurt to look at. Energy spike, Amy called out. That thing is drawing power from the other ships. Jake realized what was happening. They're combining their temporal manipulation abilities, all of them working together to create one massive time weapon. We need to break their connection, Ron decided. Kelly, target the energy links between their ships. I can't get a lock on them, Kelly replied. The energy is flowing through folded space. It's like they're passing power through dimensions we can't even see. The giant ship's glow intensified. Space around it began to shimmer and warp. 30 seconds until they fire, Katie announced. Ron made a desperate decision. Danny, reroute all power to the temporal shields. Everything we have. Sir, that means shutting down weapons and engines. We'll be sitting ducks. Better than being dead ducks, but Jake had a different idea. Wait, what if we don't try to stop their attack? What if we redirect it? Everyone looked at him. Redirect it where? Lisa asked, back at them. If we can create a temporal mirror using our shields, their own weapon might bounce back. Katie's eyes lit up. That's crazy enough to work. But I'd need to reconfigure our entire shield matrix in the next 20 seconds. Do it, both captains said together. Katie's hands flew over her, controls while Danny rerouted power from every non-essential system. The Meridian's lights dimmed as everything was channeled into the shield generators. 10 seconds, Amy warned. Almost got it, Katie muttered, sweat beading on her forehead. The Void collective weapon fired. A massive beam of twisted time and space lanced out toward the human ships. Everything it touched began aging rapidly. Small asteroids in its path crumbled to dust in seconds. Shields configured, Katie shouted. The temporal beam hit their shields and something incredible happened. Instead of aging the Meridian, the energy began bouncing back and forth between shield layers, building up intensity each time. It's working, Sam exclaimed. The energy is amplifying inside our shield matrix. Now what? Pete asked. Jake grinned. Now we give it back to them with interest. Katie, can you release all that energy at once? If I do that, the feedback could destroy our shields completely. But it might work? It might work, Ron nodded. Do it. Katie triggered the shield release. A brilliant wave of temporal energy exploded outward from the Meridian, racing back toward the Void collective fleet. The wave hit the giant ship first, and the effect was immediate. The massive vessel began aging rapidly, but not in the way it was designed to handle. Its hull, meant to exist partially outside time, couldn't cope with the accelerated aging. Sections began cracking and crumbling. The big ship is falling apart, Kelly reported excitedly. But their victory was short-lived. The other Void collective ships spread out, avoiding the temporal wave. Worse, they began changing their tactics entirely. They're adapting again, Sam warned. Look at their hull configurations. The enemy ships were reshaping themselves, becoming more solid and less dependent on temporal manipulation. They were learning to fight humans in normal space and time. That's actually worse for us, Danny realized. In normal space, they're bigger, stronger, and we're outnumbered 35-2. The collective ships began moving in new patterns, no longer relying on perfect formations. They were learning human-style tactics using cover and unpredictable movements. They're copying our fighting style, Ron observed. But they're not very good at it yet, Jake said. Look how they're moving. They're trying to be unpredictable, but they're still following mathematical patterns. Lisa nodded. The hive mind can't truly understand individual creativity. They can copy what we do, but they can't improvise like we can. Katie studied the enemy movements. They're still thinking like a collective. Every ship is trying to be unpredictable in exactly the same way. Then let's give them something really unpredictable, Jake said. He opened a channel to both crews. Everyone listen up. We're going to try something crazy. I want every person on both ships to suggest a different tactic. Don't think about whether it makes sense. Just say the first thing that comes to mind. Ideas started flowing from both crews. Some were practical, others were completely insane. Fire all weapons at once. Ram the biggest ship. Use the temporal drive to time travel. Hide behind an asteroid. Create a fake surrender signal. Split up and attack from different directions, that's it. Ron suddenly shouted. We use all of those ideas at once. All of them? Pete asked. But half of them contradict each other. Exactly. The hive mind is trying to predict our strategy. What if we don't have a strategy? What if we do everything at once? Katie began working on a new plan. We could use the temporal drive to create multiple time streams around our ships. In one stream, we surrender. In another, we attack. In a third, we run away. The collective won't know which one is real. Can we actually do that? Amy asked. I don't know, Katie admitted. The temporal drive was never designed for that kind of manipulation. It might tear our ships apart, or it might work, Sam said. The Void Collective's main advantage is their ability to predict and adapt. If we become completely unpredictable, they won't know how to respond, Ron finished. Jake looked at the approaching enemy fleet. They had maybe 5 minutes before the collective ships reached weapons range. Let's do it, he decided. Katie, how long do you need to set up these multiple time streams? 2 minutes to configure the temporal drive. But Jake, if this doesn't work, we'll have used up all our power reserves. We won't get another chance. Then we better make this one count. As Katie worked, the Void Collective fleet continued its approach. The ships had finished adapting to normal space combat and were now moving with predatory efficiency. They're confident, Kelly observed. Look at their formation. They think they have us figured out. That's about to change, Jake said grimly. Temporal drive ready, Katie announced. Everyone hold on. This is going to feel very strange. She activated the temporal manipulator and suddenly there were 3 meridians and 3 aurora dawns occupying the same space. In one time stream, the ships were charging straight at the enemy. In another, they were broadcasting a surrender signal. In the third, they were turning to run. The Void Collective fleet stopped moving entirely. For the first time since the battle began, the hive mind was completely confused. It worked, Lisa shouted. They don't know which version of us is real. Neither do I, Pete said, staring at the overlapping images on the display. That's the point, Jake laughed. If we don't know what we're doing, they definitely don't. But then the largest remaining Void Collective ship did something unexpected. Instead of trying to figure out which time stream was real, it fired at all 3 versions simultaneously. Incoming fire from multiple directions, Kelly warned. The temporal streams collapsed back into one as the meridian systems overloaded. They were back to being just 2 ships against an enemy that had learned to expect the unexpected. Temporal drive is offline, Katie reported. That's all the tricks we have. The Void Collective ships moved in for the final attack, spreading out to surround the human vessels. There was nowhere to run and no more surprises to pull. Any other ideas? Ron asked quietly. Jake looked at his crew, then at the Meridian's crew. Humans from 2 different centuries working together against an enemy that wanted to erase them from time itself. Yeah, he said. We fight like humans. The Void Collective ships closed in from all sides, their dark hulls reflecting no light. Jake could feel the weight of the moment. 2 small human ships against 35 alien vessels that had already conquered dozens of worlds. Jake, Ron said quietly over the communication link, I want you to know it's been an honor fighting alongside you. Same here. Ron, but we're not dead yet. Temporal weapons offline. Conventional weapons at minimum power, Kelly reported. We've got maybe 3 shots left in the main cannons. That's 3 more than we need, Jake said, an idea forming in his mind. Katie, you said the Void Collective feeds on temporal energy, right? Yes, they drain it from entire star systems. What happens if they get too much at once? Like a person eating too much food? Katie paused, understanding dawning on her face. Temporal overload. Their systems couldn't process that much energy flow. But Jake, we don't have that kind of power. No, but they do. Jake pointed at the enemy fleet. 35 ships all connected to each other, sharing energy through dimensional space. What if we could make that connection work against them? Sam caught on immediately. Create a feedback loop in their own network. Force them to drain energy from each other instead of from external sources. How do we do that? Danny asked. Lisa was already running calculations. We'd need to disrupt their energy flow at exactly the right frequency, like jamming a radio signal. I can reconfigure our remaining temporal weapons to create interference instead of direct attacks, Katie said excitedly. But it would take perfect timing. We'd need to hit their network at the moment they're transferring the most energy. Ron studied the enemy formation. They're preparing for a coordinated attack. All ships powering weapons simultaneously. That's when they'll be sharing the most energy. How long do we have? Jake asked. 2 minutes, maybe less, Amy replied, monitoring the enemy energy signatures. Katie, start the reconfiguration. Lisa, help her with the calculations. Everyone else prepare for emergency maneuvers. This is going to get rough. As they worked, the Void Collective ships moved into their final attack formation. The largest vessel took position at the center, with the others arranged in perfect concentric circles around it. They're going back to pattern-based thinking, Pete observed. The chaos confused them. So they're returning to what they understand. That might actually help us, Sam said. Predictable patterns are easier to disrupt than random movements. Weapons reconfigured, Katie announced. But Jake, I need to warn you. When we fire this, every temporal system on both our ships will overload. We'll be completely defenseless. If this works, we won't need defenses, Jake replied. If it doesn't work, we're dead anyway. The enemy ships began their final power-up sequence. Energy flowed between them like visible lightning, creating a web of power that connected every vessel in their fleet. There, Lisa pointed at her sensors. Maximum energy transfer happening now. Fire. Both captains shouted together. The Meridian's remaining temporal weapons fired not at the enemy ships themselves, but at the empty space where their energy beams crossed. Instead of trying to destroy or damage, the weapons created pure interference, jamming the frequencies the Void Collective used to share power. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the enemy energy web began to fluctuate wildly. Power that was supposed to flow from ship to ship started bouncing back and forth, building up intensity with each reflection. It's working, Katie shouted. Their network is overloading. The effect cascaded through the Void Collective fleet. Ships that were meant to receive energy started sending it instead. Vessels designed to share power began hoarding it. The hive mind's perfect coordination collapsed as each ship's systems were overwhelmed by conflicting energy flows. The first ship to succumb was one of the medium-sized vessels. It began glowing brighter and brighter until suddenly it simply vanished, consumed by its own temporal energy. One down, Kelly counted grimly. More ships began overloading, their hulls designed to exist partially outside normal time. Couldn't handle the massive energy buildup. They aged millennia in seconds, crumbling to dust or simply fading out of existence. But the largest ship, the one at the center of the formation, began adapting. Instead of trying to control the energy overload, it started absorbing it, growing larger and more powerful with each ship that was destroyed. That thing is using the deaths of its own fleet to make itself stronger, Ron realized with horror. The massive vessel had doubled in size and was still growing. Worse, it was learning to exist fully in normal space, giving up its temporal abilities in exchange for pure physical power. Conventional sensors show that thing is now 50 times larger than our ships combined, Amy reported. Its hull is solid metal, no more temporal distortions. So we can hurt it now, Jake said grimly. Katie, any power left in the weapons? Nothing. The feedback destroyed our temporal systems completely. We're running on emergency power only. Then we do this the old-fashioned way, Jake decided. Amy, do we have any missiles left? 6 conventional warheads. But Captain, those won't even scratch something that big. They don't have to destroy it. They just have to get inside it. Amy understood immediately. You want to detonate them inside the ship's hull? Ron, does the Meridian have any way to beam people aboard enemy vessels? We have experimental matter transporters, but they've never been tested on living subjects. What about non-living subjects? Like missiles? Ron grinned despite their desperate situation. That might actually work. Danny, can you transport Captain Morrison's missiles directly into that ship's interior? If their shields are down, yes. But I'd need exact targeting coordinates. Jake opened a channel to Tony, who had been monitoring everything from the medical bay. Tony, you've been scanning that big ship. Any idea where their most vulnerable spot might be? Based on energy readings, they seem to have a central power core about halfway through the ship. If you could hit that, do it, Jake ordered. Amy, prep all missiles for transport. Set them to detonate on arrival. Coordinates locked, Danny announced. Transporting in 3, 2, 1. The missiles vanished from the Aurora Dawn's launch tubes and reappeared deep inside the Void Collective ship. The explosions were tiny compared to the vessel's massive size, but they were in exactly the right place. The giant ship's power core destabilized. Internal explosions began cascading through its hull as systems overloaded one after another. The vessel, now too large and solid to exist partially outside normal space, couldn't escape the chain reaction. It's breaking apart, Lisa shouted with joy. The massive ship split in half, then quarters, then smaller pieces. Each explosion weakened it further until finally, the entire vessel collapsed into scrap metal and energy. Silence fell over both ships as the crew stared at the empty space where the Void Collective fleet had been moments before. Is that all of them? Pete asked quietly. Katie checked her sensors. All ships destroyed. I'm not detecting any survivors. Jake slumped in his command chair, exhausted. We did it. Somehow we actually did it. Captain, Amy called from her station. I'm receiving a transmission from Earth Command. Admiral Johnson's voice came through the speakers, filled with amazement. Captains Morrison and Hayes, please tell me you're both alive over there. We're here, Admiral, Jake replied. Battered but alive. Outstanding work, both of you. Our sensors detected the destruction of the entire Void Collective fleet. How did you manage it? Ron answered. We got them to defeat themselves, ma'am. Used their own coordination against them. Well, whatever you did, it worked. Intelligence reports are coming in from across the galaxy. Void Collective forces everywhere have suddenly stopped their attacks and retreated. It's like they're afraid of something. Katie spoke up. Admiral, I think I know why. The hive mind shared information instantaneously across their entire species. When we showed them that humans could turn their greatest strength into a weakness, that information was transmitted to every collective ship in the galaxy. So they know now that humanity can defeat them. More than that, Sam added. They know that humans don't fight the way they expected. We don't follow patterns or use predictable strategies. We adapt, improvise, and find ways to win even when it should be impossible. Admiral Johnson was quiet for a moment. So what happens now? Jake looked around at both crews. People from 2 different centuries who had worked together to save humanity itself. Now we go home. The Meridian crew has a lot of catching up to do, and humanity has a lot to learn from their technology. Captain Morrison, Ron said formally, it's been an honor serving alongside you and your crew. The honor was ours. Captain Hayes, welcome to the 24th century. As both ships began the long journey back to Earth, Jake made one final log entry. The enemy thought they understood us. They studied our patterns, adapted to our technology, and learned to counter our strategies. But they missed the most important thing about humanity. We never give up and we never stop changing. When they finally understood that, they realized something that every enemy of humanity learns eventually. We might not be the strongest or the smartest species in the galaxy, but we're the most dangerous one to underestimate. The crew of the Meridian lost 100 years, but their sacrifice saved